my. I could listen to Charlene sing all day. Amen. She's lucky she's not my wife, because I would have her singing in the morning, in the evening, late in the midnight hour. Amen. Amen. She has one angelic voice. Let's give her a round of applause one more time. Amen. My favorite word is God bless us. We thank God for another opportunity that He is giving us, and we don't take it very lightly. And first of all, before we go any further, I want to thank the First Missionary Baptist Church for hosting us on tonight. Let's thank the pastor. Amen. Deacon Anthony Pickett. Amen. Amen. He's been my right-hand man throughout all of this, and we don't take it lightly. We're truly grateful for them hosting us on tonight. We have some very important information that we want to share with you on tonight. But before we do that, I want to recognize all the pastors that are here. All the pastors, wave your hand, stand up, show who you are. I was texting on Facebook last night and inviting people to come here, and then so I said, well, I'm not just going to ask pastors to not have Bible study. So I said, well, Wednesday night Bible study is really important, but this is what we're having tomorrow night is really important also. Yeah, so we thank you all for canceling your Bible studies and coming to be with us on tonight. Once again, we have some very important information that we want to share with you. A lot of you, if you've been paying attention to the news, you've been seeing what's going on across the nation, but especially that what's been happening in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we want to address it so that we can inform you that you might make your own decision, but that you know what kind of decision that you are making. So tonight we're going to start off with, a lot of you all know Pastor Kevin Riggs. He pastors the Franklin Community Church over on Hard Bargain. How many of y'all know Hard Bargain? All right, good. That's a slang name. Amen. But he's a good friend of mine. He's also my chairperson. He's helping me to guide my way through this election, along with Jody Smith. Jody, raise your hand. She's yeah. So without further ado, we're going to ask Pastor Kevin Riggs, if he would come now at this time. Thank you.
Again, Pastor, thanks for opening your door tonight, and thank you, Elder Haynes. If you will allow me, I'm going to, out of consideration of your time and the seriousness of the matter, I'm going to forego pleasantries and just get right into it. Right? We are here tonight not because we want to be here, but because duty calls us to step on the shoulders of our civil rights activists and ancestors and say, this has got to stop. The gerrymandering must stop. Voter suppression must stop. The SAVE Act that suppresses the votes of women, the poor, and the minorities must stop. The gutting of the Civil Rights Act of 1965 must stop. We must decide, are we going to stand up for our democracy or slide further into autocracy and oligarchy? In the words of one of the greatest protest songs ever written, somebody is hurting my brother And it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Somebody is hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Not only are we standing on the shoulders of our civil rights ancestors, we are also proclaiming, like the Old Testament prophets, woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless. What will you do on the day of reckoning? What when disaster comes from afar? To whom will you run to for help? Where will you leave your riches? In 2013, the Civil Rights Act of 1965 was gutted through the Supreme Court decision of Shelby County v. Holder. Their ruling removed federal oversight, allowing states to implement restrictive voting laws. I hope you got that. The reason we're here today is because the federal regulations have been done away with, and so the state can do whatever they want to do. This past week, the United States Supreme Court filleted what was left of the Civil Rights Act of 1965 and threw it on the altar of power and corruption. Following the ruling this week, former President Barack Obama commented, and I quote, "Today's Supreme Court decision effectively guts a key pillar of the Voting Rights Act, freeing state legislatures to gerrymander legislative districts to systematically dilute and weaken the voting power of racial minorities." Dr. King proclaimed, "We must never forget that the vote is the foundation of our democracy." And now our legislature, on the orders of Governor Lee, has turned the state capitol in Nashville, has returned to the state capitol of Nashville for a special session to redraw the state's voting districts. All of this in an attempt to get rid of the only Democratic district in Tennessee. Once again, like in 2013, once again, the focus is on Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, a county that is 53% African American and a city that is 65% African American. Shelby County, Memphis, is the only county, city in Tennessee with an African American majority. And if you've seen the map they displayed on the news tonight, they are dividing Memphis into 3 districts, with the black population being 29% in one district, 29% in the other district, 30% in the third district. No more minority representation. The target of all of this is Representative Justin Pearson, who is running to be our congressman in Washington, D.C. District 9. District 9, the district in question, has been led by a Democrat since 1974. After the 1980 census, District 9 was redrawn as a black majority district, the only black majority district in Tennessee. And so after 46 years, our Republican supermajority wants to change that, disenfranchising tens of thousands of African Americans. If successful, the gerrymandering will result in one more Republican seat in Congress that will help President Trump to remain in power after the midterm elections. Marsha Blackburn, who encouraged Governor Lee to call this special session, said, and I quote, "I urge our state legislature to reconvene to redistrict another Republican seat in Memphis." They're not hiding this. She went on to say, "It is essential to cement President Trump's agenda, the golden age of America." And just to be clear, golden age is a dog whistle for a white supremacist agenda. This has got to stop. Some will say, both Democrats and Republicans have redrawn districts to favor themselves. And they're right. But this time, what the Republicans are doing is illegal. Yesterday, on the Senate floor, Senator Jeff Yarborough said, what we are being called here today to do is unquestionably illegal. Why is it illegal? Tennessee rules and regulations clearly state that redistricting can only occur every 10 years after a census. What is happening now is in the middle of a 10-year census. In addition, redistricting has to involve public comment and engagement. And that has not happened. Furthermore, the state Senate districts must be contiguous. I had to look that word up. It means sharing a common border or touching. It has to be as contiguous as possible, and special effort must be taken to avoid dividing too many counties when drawing state house lines. And Shelby County is now in 3 districts. One of those districts is in Williamson County. Can you believe that? How is that contiguous? Two of them are. Yeah, if I looked at the map and you got Williamson County and part of it goes up to the north and then all the way across the border to the west and then down to Memphis. And then the other one, Williamson County, goes down to the south all the way across the Alabama border west to Memphis. It is ridiculous. And all the other districts are somewhat equal. Just a glump here and a glump here. But all of a sudden, the only reason Republicans can do this is because this week the Supreme Court dismantled the voting rights of 1965. After the Covenant shooting, it took Governor Lee months to call a special session to talk about gun violence. After one day after the Supreme Court decision, called a special session to gerrymander. God, through his prophet Jeremiah, said, your wrongdoings have kept these away. Your sins have deprived you of good. Among my people are the wicked who lie in wait like men who snare birds, and like those who set traps to catch people. Like cages full of birds, their houses are full of deceit. They have become rich and powerful and have grown fat and sleek. Their evil deeds have no limit. They do not seek justice. They do not promote the case of the fatherless. They do not defend the just cause of the poor. Should I punish them for this, declares the Lord? Should I not avenge myself on such a nation as this? Over the past 12 years, I've been warning the church about the dangers of white Christian nationalism. At times, I have felt like a lone voice crying in the wilderness. And what we are seeing today is the result of this heretical, anti-democratic ideology. Simply put, Christian nationalism is an attempt to enforce the reign of Christ through the power of the state. The goal of a Christian nationalist is to create a theocratic form of government. And the only thing worse than authoritarianism or dictatorship is a theocracy. History teaches us any time religion gets into bed with the government, her offspring are oppression, bigotry, racism, inequality, destruction of democracy, unending wars, and divisiveness. The goal of a representative democracy is to govern by peace, unity, and equality. The goal of any theocratic rule of government is to rule by force, violence, and intimidation. A key ingredient of all that is voter suppression. The deceitfulness behind Christian nationalism is using religious symbols and religious language to promote a harmful political idea. This has got to stop. We must push back against Christian nationalism and rebuild and defend the wall that separates church and state. Only then will we truly be free. Christian nationalism in the United States is rooted in white supremacy. And the white Christian nationalist playbook is Project 2025. Project 2025, published in 2023, is rooted in injecting narrower interpretations of gender, sexuality, and race in federal policy. It calls for ending nearly all of the U.S. government's efforts to achieve equity. One of the goals of Project 2025 is to get rid of or greatly diminish the Voters' Rights Act of 1965. We must see this special session called by Governor Lee at Marsha Blackburn's request for what it is, an attempt to silence minority voices and suppress minority voting rights. King Solomon wrote, "Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe contempts the heart." Jesus said, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." Several years ago, I was eating lunch at our community center that's just down the street with my favorite group of people in all of Franklin, the Sassy Seniors. I see some sassy seniors here tonight. They are my favorite group because they always make me chest pies for my birthday. They are responsible for my diabetes. This was during the presidential election year, and they were bemoaning the lack of voting by the younger generation. I listened intently because I was tired of my candidates not winning. It felt like my vote no longer counted, and I was considering not voting at all in that year's election. One of the ladies, they didn't know what I was thinking, but in the conversation, one of the ladies with righteous indignation said something like this: "These young people don't realize the battles we fought and the blood that was shed to give us the right to vote. Not voting is a disgrace to our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents." I've never forgotten that conversation, and I vowed to never miss a vote. Local, state, federal, it doesn't matter. I'm going to vote. At this moment, like other moments in our history, the most important thing we can do is vote. The iconic writer and intellectualist James Baldwin said, "The vote is a powerful tool for change and self-expression. Your vote is your voice. Silence is complicity." This has got to stop. And the way to stop it is in the voting booth. So let's vote. Let's register others to vote. Let's organize and drive people to the voting booth. On election day, let's show up and show out. Let's keep going. Let's push back. Let's make the world a better place for ourselves and for our neighbors and for our children and for our grandchildren. And let's sing along with those who sang long ago, "We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. This has got to stop. And let's be the movement that stops it.
Can I say that was some good preaching? Yeah, it was. He had the word all tied up in there. That was